Imagine walking into a grand Roman villa 2,000 years ago. Your sandals click against polished stone, and suddenly, beneath your feet, an entire ocean comes alive. Dolphins leap through blue tesserae. Sea gods beckon from the depths. This wasn't just decoration. This was storytelling frozen in stone, a window into the soul of ancient Rome that we're about to unlock together. The Romans didn't invent mosaics, but they perfected them into an art form that would define luxury, status, and cultural identity across their entire empire. From the bustling streets of Pompeii to the far reaches of Roman Britain, these intricate floors told stories of mythology, daily life, and imperial power. What makes these ancient artworks so captivating isn't just their beauty. It's the incredible techniques behind them, the hidden meanings embedded in every carefully placed stone, and the lives of the craftsmen who created them. These weren't mere decorations. They were status symbols, religious statements, and historical records all compressed into durable, colorful floors that have outlasted the very civilization that created them. The story of Roman mosaics begins centuries before Rome itself dominated the Mediterranean. The Greeks experimented with pebble mosaics as early as the 5th century BCE, using smooth river stones to create basic geometric patterns and simple figures. These early attempts were crude by later standards. Imagine trying to paint a portrait using only rocks the size of walnuts. But they established a crucial principle. Permanent images could be built from small, durable pieces rather than painted pigments that would fade and flake. The real breakthrough came when craftsmen in the Hellenistic period discovered they could cut stones into tiny, uniform cubes called tesserae. This innovation, seemingly simple, revolutionized the entire medium. Suddenly, the resolution of mosaic images jumped dramatically. Where pebbles created blocky, abstract forms, tesserae allowed for refined detail, subtle color gradations, and realistic depictions that rivaled painting. When Rome conquered the Greek world, they didn't just take their land and treasures. They absorbed this artistic technique and transformed it into something uniquely Roman, spreading it across 3 continents and developing it into an industrial-scale craft that would define interior decoration for centuries. The creation of a Roman mosaic was an elaborate, multi-stage process that required multiple specialists and could take months or even years to complete. The first step involved the calcinator, a specialist who prepared the foundation. This foundation wasn't a single layer but a carefully engineered sandwich of materials. The bottom layer, called the statumen, consisted of large stones set in mortar, essentially a stabilizing bed that prevented the entire mosaic from shifting as the ground settled. Above this came the rudis, a layer of crushed pottery and tile mixed with lime, typically 4 to 6 inches thick. This provided a level, solid surface while allowing some flexibility. The third layer, the nucleus, was finer still, a mixture of crushed brick and lime that created a smooth working surface. Finally came the setting bed, a thin layer of fine mortar into which the tesserae would be pressed. The Pictor Imaginarius was the master designer, the artist who conceived the overall composition. He would often work from pattern books, collections of popular designs that could be adapted to different spaces and client preferences. These weren't rigid templates but flexible frameworks. A client might request a scene of Bacchus discovering Ariadne or a hunting scene with boars, and the Pictor Imaginarius would sketch the composition directly onto the setting bed, adjusting the figures to fit the room's dimensions and the client's budget. The sketch included not just the main figures but also the intricate borders that would frame the scene, geometric patterns, floral motifs, wave designs, or interlocking meanders that showed off the craftsman's precision. The actual laying of tesserae fell to the tessellarius, the mosaic worker who transformed sketch into stone. This was painstaking, repetitive work that required extraordinary patience and a keen eye for color and form. The tessellarius worked from bins and bowls containing tesserae sorted by color, whites from limestone or marble, blacks from basalt or slate, reds from terracotta, yellows from yellow limestone, blues from glass or Egyptian blue pigment, greens from green marble or serpentine. The palette was limited compared to painting, yet skilled craftsmen achieved remarkable subtlety by placing contrasting colors adjacent to each other, creating optical mixing effects that the eye would blend from a distance. The tesserae themselves varied significantly in size depending on the level of detail required. Floor mosaics designed to be viewed from standing height used tesserae roughly half an inch to an inch square, large enough to work relatively quickly while still achieving good detail. But for opus vermiculatum, the most refined technique used for central panels and important figures, tesserae could be as small as 2 or 3 millimeters. At this scale, mosaic approached the resolution of painting. These microtesserae were often made from glass rather than stone, allowing for colors impossible to achieve in natural materials. Brilliant blues, deep purples, and shimmering gold that caught lamplight and made figures seem to glow. The process was not just technically demanding but physically exhausting. Tessellariae worked on their knees for hours, hunched over the floor, pressing each tiny piece into place with thumb and forefinger. Their hands would cramp, their backs ache, their knees bruise despite padding. Yet the work demanded absolute focus. A single misplaced tessera in a face could ruin the expression. A wrong color in a gradation could break the illusion of depth. This was craft elevated to art through sheer discipline and repetition. Master tessellariae trained for years, often learning the trade from fathers or elder craftsmen in family workshops that passed techniques across generations. One of the most fascinating aspects of Roman mosaics is what they chose to depict and why. These weren't random pretty pictures. Every image carried meaning, whether obvious or subtle. The most common subjects were drawn from mythology, particularly the stories of the gods. A dining room might feature Bacchus, god of wine and revelry, surrounded by satyrs and maenads, a clear signal that this was a space for feasting and pleasure. A bathhouse would show marine deities like Neptune or Oceanus, reinforcing the theme of water and cleansing. These weren't just decorative choices. They were sophisticated statements about the function of the space and the cultural literacy of the owner. Geometric patterns, while less obviously symbolic, carried their own meanings. The intricate borders that framed figural panels demonstrated mathematical precision and philosophical order. The meander pattern, with its endless interlocking lines, symbolized infinity and the eternal nature of the cosmos. The galoche braid, with its interwoven strands, represented interconnection and unity. Even simple checkerboard patterns referenced the order and rationality that Romans prized in their worldview. A home filled with precise, symmetrical geometric mosaics announced that its owner valued intellectual sophistication, not just wealth. Hunting scenes were enormously popular, especially in the homes of the elite. These images weren't simply decorative, they were statements of virtus, the Roman concept of masculine courage and excellence. Hunting was considered training for warfare, and displaying successful hunts associated the homeowner with military prowess and bravery. The specific animals mattered too. A mosaic showing a lion hunt connected the owner to exotic conquests, since lions didn't live in Italy and had to be imported from Africa or the Near East. A boar hunt, meanwhile, referenced both Roman tradition and the legendary Caledonian boar hunt from Greek mythology, linking the homeowner to heroic ancestry. Daily life scenes, while less common than mythology or hunting, offer modern historians invaluable glimpses into Roman existence. A mosaic from Ostia shows merchants unloading goods from ships, direct evidence of commercial activity at Rome's port. Another from North Africa depicts olive harvesting and oil pressing, documentation of the agricultural economy that fueled the empire. These weren't meant as historical records for future archaeologists. They were celebrations of the owner's livelihood, visual resumes that announced, "This is how I made my fortune, and I'm proud of it." Some mosaics carried warnings or protective functions. The famous Cave Canem mosaic from Pompeii shows a chained guard dog with the warning "Beware of the dog," spelled out in tesserae. This served a practical purpose, alerting visitors to the actual guard dog that likely roamed the atrium, but also functioned as apotropaic magic, a protective symbol that warded off evil spirits and unwelcome visitors through its fierce imagery. Other mosaics placed at thresholds showed the evil eye pierced by weapons or attacked by animals, direct visual spells against curses and jealousy. Religious devotion found expression in mosaic as well, particularly in the later empire as Christianity spread. Early Christian mosaics in churches and catacombs used symbolic imagery that believers would recognize but persecutors might overlook. The fish, or ichthyes, became a secret sign of Christian identity. Anchors represented hope and steadfastness, The Good Shepherd, a young man carrying a lamb, appeared frequently. Ostensibly a pastoral scene but understood by Christians as representing Christ. As Christianity became legal and then dominant, church mosaics grew grander and more explicit, covering walls and ceilings with biblical scenes and saintly figures rendered in glittering gold and jewel-toned glass. The materials used in Roman mosaics reveal the vast reach and sophisticated trade networks of the empire. Common colors came from local sources: limestone and marble for whites and creams, terracotta and brick for reds and oranges, various colored marbles for browns, grays, and pinks, but rare and expensive colors required imports from across the known world. True blue was difficult to achieve in natural stone, so craftsmen used Egyptian blue, a synthetic pigment invented in ancient Egypt and imported at considerable cost. Even more expensive were tesserae made from colored glass, which could be produced in virtually any hue by adding different metal oxides during the melting process. Cobalt for deep blue, copper for turquoise and green, manganese for purple. Gold tesserae represented the pinnacle of mosaic luxury. These weren't solid gold, that would be impossibly expensive and structurally impractical, but rather thin gold leaf sandwiched between two layers of glass. The gold would be applied to a flat glass backing, then covered with a thin layer of clear or slightly colored glass, creating a tesserae that glittered with metallic brilliance yet remained durable enough for walls and ceilings. These gold tesserae were used sparingly in secular mosaics but became dominant in later Christian church decoration, where they created shimmering backgrounds that symbolized divine light and heavenly glory. The regional styles of Roman mosaics reveal how this art form adapted to local tastes and materials across the empire. Italian mosaics, particularly those from Pompeii and Herculaneum preserved by Vesuvius's eruption, show sophisticated black and white geometric patterns combined with polychrome figural panels. These Italian floors often featured a black and white field with a colorful emblema, a prefabricated panel showing a detailed scene, set into the center. The emblema was often made in a workshop using the finest opus vermiculatum technique, then transported to the site and installed like a piece of furniture. This allowed clients to purchase ready-made high-quality centerpieces and have them incorporated into custom floor designs. North African mosaics developed a distinctive style marked by bold colors, dynamic compositions, and scenes from daily life. Tunisia, Libya, and Algeria contain some of the empire's best-preserved mosaics because many sites were abandoned rather than continuously inhabited and built over. African workshops became famous for their vivid hunting scenes and agricultural depictions, their willingness to show motion and action rather than static poses. The famous Triumph of Neptune mosaic from Sousse, Tunisia, explodes with energy. Dozens of sea creatures swirl around the god in a composition that seems to move and flow despite being locked in stone. British mosaics, created at the empire's northwestern frontier, show fascinating hybrid characteristics. Native Celtic artistic traditions of spirals and knotwork merged with imported Roman techniques and subjects. British workshops produced competent work but rarely achieved the refinement of Italian or African masters. The tesserae were often larger and more irregular, the color palettes more limited due to fewer imported materials. Yet these British mosaics possess their own charm, and their very limitations tell us about the challenges of maintaining Roman cultural practices far from Mediterranean supply networks and training centers. Eastern provinces, particularly Syria and Palestine, developed their own distinctive approaches. These regions had longer traditions of mosaic work predating Roman conquest, and local styles persisted even under Roman rule. Eastern mosaics often showed denser compositions with less negative space, more complex floral and vine patterns, and occasionally incorporated text, inscriptions in Greek identifying scenes or figures, or dedicatory messages recording the mosaic's patron and creation date. The decline of Roman mosaic art mirrors the broader transformation of the Western Roman Empire. As economic prosperity declined in the 4th and 5th centuries, fewer private citizens could afford elaborate floor mosaics. The craft didn't disappear but shifted focus. Workshops increasingly created mosaics for churches rather than villas, for communal religious spaces rather than private homes. The techniques simplified, tesserae grew larger and more uniform, compositions became more stylized and less naturalistic, the labor-intensive opus vermiculatum gave way to faster, coarser methods. Yet this wasn't simply decline, it was transformation. Byzantine mosaics, which emerged from late Roman traditions, created some of history's most breathtaking artworks. The walls and domes of Byzantine churches glittered with gold-ground mosaics showing Christ, the Virgin Mary, and saints rendered in a transcendent, non-naturalistic style. These deliberately rejected the naturalism of classical Roman work in favor of spiritual intensity. Figures floated against gold backgrounds, existing outside normal space and time. Proportions became hieratic. Christ and the Virgin appeared larger than other figures regardless of spatial logic, because spiritual importance trumped visual realism. This wasn't a failure to achieve Roman standards, but a conscious artistic choice reflecting changed priorities. In the Islamic world, which conquered former Roman territories in the East, mosaic techniques persisted but subject matter transformed completely. Islamic religious law discouraged figural representation in sacred spaces, so mosque mosaics featured purely geometric patterns and calligraphic inscriptions. The mathematical sophistication of these designs rivaled anything Rome produced, creating infinite tessellations that symbolized the eternal nature of divine order. Roman technical expertise thus survived and evolved, its methods preserved even as its subjects changed utterly. The rediscovery of Roman mosaics during the Renaissance profoundly influenced Western art. When excavations at Pompeii began in the 18th century, the pristine mosaics found under volcanic ash astonished scholars and artists. Here was Roman art exactly as created, not ruined fragments but complete, vibrant works. The discovery sparked renewed interest in mosaic techniques and ancient subjects. Neoclassical artists studied and copied Roman designs, incorporating mosaic motifs into paintings, architecture, and decorative arts. Modern archaeological methods have revealed details about mosaic production that ancient sources never recorded. Careful excavation can identify workshop signatures, distinctive ways of cutting tesserae, preferred color combinations, characteristic figure proportions that allow archaeologists to attribute unsigned works to specific workshops or even individual craftsmen. Chemical analysis of tesserae reveals their source materials and trade patterns. Glass tesserae can be traced to specific manufacturing centers through their chemical signatures. Stone tesserae can be matched to quarries, showing us exactly which marble sources supplied which regions. This turns mosaics into evidence for economic history, documenting the movement of materials and goods across the empire. Digital technology now allows unprecedented analysis and reconstruction. Photogrammetry can record every tessera in a mosaic, creating millimeter-accurate 3D models that preserve information even if the original deteriorates. Computer analysis can identify patterns invisible to the naked eye, subtle alignments, mathematical proportions, even corrections where craftsmen changed their minds mid-work and relayed sections. Damaged mosaics can be virtually reconstructed, giving scholars and the public a sense of their original appearance while leaving the actual ancient fragments undisturbed. The human stories behind mosaics emerge from unexpected details. A mosaic from Antioch shows tiny footprints. A child wandered across the setting bed before it hardened, and the craftsman either didn't notice or decided to leave this accidental record. Centuries later, these footprints connect us directly to a moment of everyday chaos in a Roman workshop, a child's curiosity or mischief immortalized forever. Another mosaic shows a deliberately misplaced tessera in a geometric border, possibly a craftsman's signature, possibly an intentional imperfection made from religious humility, acknowledging that only the gods create perfect works. Some mosaics record the names of their creators, rare evidence of working-class life. An inscription might read, "Victorinus made this," or "the work of Heraclitus the mosaicist." These simple statements preserve individual identities that would otherwise be lost. Men whose legal names and life dates didn't merit historical record but whose craft skill earned them this small immortality. When we read these names, we connect directly across 2,000 years to the person who knelt on this floor, placed these stones, and felt pride enough to sign their work. The survival of Roman mosaics is itself remarkable. While frescoes flaked and faded, while wooden furnishings rotted, while textiles disintegrated, the stone mosaics endured. Their very function as floors, walked on, ignored, covered by centuries of accumulated debris, paradoxically protected them. When buildings collapsed, falling rubble sealed mosaics beneath protective layers. When sites were abandoned, wind-blown soil gradually buried them. The same obscurity that hid them from sight shielded them from vandalism and weathering. Today, Roman mosaics exist in an interesting tension between preservation and accessibility. The finest examples rest in museums: the Alexander mosaic from Pompeii and Naples, the Zlatan mosaic in Libya, the Antioch mosaics scattered between the Louvre, the Met, and Baltimore's Walters Art Museum. Removed from their original context, they can be properly conserved, lit, and studied. Yet something is lost when a floor mosaic hangs on a wall, viewed like a painting rather than walked past, missing the context of the room it once defined. In situ preservation, maintaining mosaics in their original locations presents enormous challenges. Tourists walking across ancient floors wear them down. Environmental fluctuations, moisture, temperature changes, vegetation growth, threaten their structural integrity. Many sites protect mosaics by covering them with sand or gravel, literally reburying them to ensure survival at the cost of visibility. Some use removable protective layers that can be lifted for special viewing. Others create full-scale replicas for tourists to see while the originals remain protected beneath. The legacy of Roman mosaic art extends far beyond ancient history. Modern artists continue to work in mosaic, drawing on Roman techniques while exploring contemporary subjects and styles. Public art mosaics decorate subway stations, community centers, and parks, using the same basic principle: small pieces creating large images, that Roman craftsmen pioneered. The digital images on our screens are directly descended from this ancient technique. Pixels are simply tesserae made of light rather than stone, our displays achieving through electronics the same effect Roman artists created through patient handwork. As we close this journey through the art of Roman mosaics, consider what these ancient floors reveal about human creativity and persistence. Roman craftsmen, working without power tools or modern adhesives, without computer-aided design or prefabricated materials, created artworks that have outlasted their entire civilization. They transformed labor-intensive craft into high art, turned humble stone cubes into glittering visions of myth and daily life. The techniques they developed were so effective that they remained essentially unchanged for centuries, passed from master to apprentice in workshops across 3 continents. These weren't just decorative objects but statements of identity, expressions of cultural values, records of how Romans saw themselves and their world. Every mosaic we uncover adds to our understanding of this complex civilization: their technology, their economy, their aesthetics, their mythology, their sense of beauty and order. The dolphin that leaps across a floor in Pompeii, the hunter who faces a boar in Tunisia, the geometric pattern that fills a British villa. Each tells its story if we take time to look, to understand the techniques behind the beauty, to see the human hands that placed each tiny stone with care. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the lost art of Roman mosaics, subscribe to Trail of Shards for more journeys through ancient civilizations and forgotten crafts. Hit that like button if you found this fascinating, and drop a comment sharing which aspect of mosaic creation surprised you most: the intricate techniques, the hidden meanings, or the incredible durability of these ancient artworks. Until our next historical adventure, keep exploring the fragments of the past that connect us to the humans who came before.